The Belfast 43 is one of World of Warships Legend's greatest redemption stories. Back when the ship was first released as a Tier 7 premium for a campaign reward, it was worse than its counterpart, the regular Belfast, at Tier 6. Maybe it wasn't worse per se, but it had slower reloading guns, and of course it was a tier higher, so you would expect the opposite to be true. Everybody complained about it, from what I can remember, when it first came out, and Wargaming responded by buffing the ship into its current state. In fact, I think they buffed it again for the most recent update. Just small marginal things, but now, the Belfast 43 is a very effective cruiser at Tier 7, and I think a ship worth getting. It's of course back in the game in the special section of the store. You can acquire it for 6,500 drachmas, along with the Georgia, the Siegfried, Independence, and I think the Agla at Tier 5. Out of all those ships, I would recommend the Georgia #1, and this thing second, over the Siegfried even, because the Siegfried has its own problems. But the Belfast 43 can be a very effective game-winning cruiser, and this match that I've got here should demonstrate the efficacy of this ship. It's not going to be the highest damage match you've ever seen, but you'll see the utility of the Belfast 43 on full display, and that utility comes from its suite of consumables. The Belfast at Tier 6 has an overpowered consumable combination, in my opinion. It's got full-length smoke screens, and by that I mean you can sit in the smoke screens for over a minute, and on top of that, it's got radar. The Belfast 43 kind of sort of shares that same overpowered consumable suite. As you can see, it does have radar and it does have smoke, but it's got 6 charges of smoke because these are the short duration British destroyer smokes, more or less. They only last for about 40 seconds or so after you deploy them, and we're going to do that here in order to cut off line of sight from these 3 ships. For some reason, the enemy CV is actually spotted out there 13 kilometers away, and as you can see, he's sending his planes at us. The Belfast 43, I think perhaps the worst thing you can say about it is that it's not exactly the most capable ship of defending itself when it comes to aircraft carriers, although it does have the one and only counter to CVs, which is the smoke screens. If you hide from a CV in the smoke screen, they have a much harder time dropping you. The AA, however, is not going to do the trick here, I don't think anyway. However, against enemy destroyers, this thing is pretty good. You can see the Jaeger over here. He's spotted for one reason or another. We're able to shoot at him with the HE. And if he goes dark, he's well within our 9-kilometer radar range, so we'll be able to detect him. But of course, that's not going to be necessary because he goes down as our first kill of the game, followed by the enemy CV, who, again, for whatever reason, was spotted on this flank. It almost seemed like he was trying to hunt me down specifically, and he got a little bit overzealous in that endeavor, so now he's going to have to think about his choices back in port. But that's fine. That puts our team at a great advantage. And now we'll just do some fighting with the Shimanto and the Kansas out here. We're up to 47,000 damage done, you see. And you kind of get a sense of what the playstyle of the Belfast 43 is. It's sort of like this hit-and-run ambush type thing with these smoke screens. You set up, you deploy a smoke screen, maybe you use the radar to detect and counter an enemy destroyer in the cap, you deal some damage to battleships and cruisers, light some fires, the smoke screen dissipates, and then you reposition. You have 9.7 kilometer concealment on this ship if you build into it, which is excellent for the tier. Very stealthy cruiser. And then these smoke screens, that radar, and the sonar provide you the utility you need to get around the map and assist your team with important things like playing the objective. We're going to capture the Charlie Cap now, thanks in part to our work in sinking the Jaeger, and then we're going to reapproach this island and try to re-engage either the Shimanto or Kansas or both. We still have 5 charges of our smoke screen, which we can deploy if necessary. You might have noticed, though, that these three consumable slots, the sonar, the smoke, and the radar, occupy all of the consumables you can use, and therefore we don't have a heal. You can carry a heal on the Belfast 43 if you want to, but in order to do it, you've got to give up one of these consumables, so I don't think it's worth it. And that may be a little bit of a downside. Pretty much every other cruiser at this tier does have a heal, and you don't. Of course, the Belfast 43 also has the same sort of armor scheme as the regular Belfast, which is to say it has none, and it can be overmatched by every battleship you're going to encounter. Anything can pen its armor and citadel it, but it does have the unique characteristic of being a British cruiser with a smokescreen that has both HE and AP. There we get a little bit of a taste of the AP against the broadside Shimanto, but these are, of course, light cruiser 152mm guns, so I wasn't really expecting any citadels at that distance, although I think they are probably possible. Maybe we just got unlucky, or perhaps we were aiming a little bit too high. I think I would be remiss also not to mention that the Belfast 43 has torpedoes, unlike the regular Belfast at Tier 6. There you can see the launcher as we're trying to look at the direction of one of those ships out there. I think we launched some of the torpedoes earlier, but it's got two triple torpedo launchers on either side of the ship. I think the torpedoes have a 9-kilometer range or something like that. I don't actually have the numbers in front of me, but they're not the main armament of the ship, let's say. They're a nice supplement to the damage you can do with the guns, but with the limited number, you're not always going to be hitting the torpedoes. Of course, since it's British, it has the unique British ability to single fire the... Wow, look at that blind shot there. The Kansas actually hits us. This is why you've got to be moving inside of your smokescreen. Even the Shimanto's trying to get in on the action. What is with all this blind firing? The Shimanto hits us too. Crazy, but he's gonna die. He's pushing bow into like 2 battleships. We're still in the smoke screen. We're gonna maybe launch some torpedoes in his direction. Kansas has taken himself behind the island into a position where he probably can't shoot at us. And Shimanto continues forward, pushing into our HE spam and hopefully our battleship teammates' guns. So he's not gonna be long for this world. But anyway, you're not really going to be hitting too many things with these torpedoes. They're a nice damage supplement, and they have the unique British capability of being single-fired, so you can pinpoint aim them if necessary. They don't do a ton of damage when they hit, but of course they can cause floodings, which can be major problems. And I was hoping for the double strike here against the Kansas and the Shimanto. I believe I did have a fire burning on the Shimanto, but I think it was the friendly destroyer who took that guy out and robbed me of my double strike. How terrible. But it's fine. There are only 4 ships left alive, 3 of which are battleships. They've all been sort of hanging out in the back of the map, perhaps at a loss for what to do since their CV sunk so early. And this is going to be a pretty easy win here. At least it should be. Tirpitz is pushing in. Once again, we're deploying a smoke screen. After this charge, we still have 2 left even. And so we can farm the Tirpitz as he comes in. The HE will do good damage against his superstructure if it hits and doesn't shatter elsewhere on his hull. And it'll also light fires. There's another one with about 5,000 damage into his superstructure. So you can see that these guns are pretty good when it comes to firing the HE. The AP's alright as well. Overall, it's just a very good ship, and it's got these smoke screens, which really give it a different playstyle than most other cruisers out there. You have to be careful, though, because since this is a British cruiser, I think I would also be remiss not to mention this sort of downside or upside. You could look at it either way. But since it's a British cruiser, it has some unique acceleration parameters built in. It accelerates to full speed very quickly, but it takes forever to slow down. So when you're going to deploy one of these smoke screens, it is important to sort of slow down before you actually hit the button, Because if you don't, if you're going at full speed and you hit the smoke screen, you're probably just going to glide right out of it by the time it's done deploying. You just don't have enough time to stop dead in the water while deploying a smoke screen and still be concealed. So you do have to be careful of that, but at the same time, the increased acceleration can help you avoid salvos by essentially dodging them with your speedy acceleration, which is nice. We were running the Hot Rod Commander as the commander for this game. He gives you some extra radar bonuses, but he's not necessary. I think either of the free British commanders work just as well on this ship. We end the game with 3,000 base XP thanks to the utility we provided, I think mostly by sinking the Jaeger, and just nice little decent showcase of the Belfast 43. It's a good ship. I would recommend it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.